Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing my November 2025 State of the Collection. I currently have a 4-piece collection and I keep my 4 pieces in this Mirage Luxury travel roll. From left to right, we have my Pequignet Concorde 40, my Rolex Submariner date 126610 LV Starbucks, my Rolex Submariner date 16610, and my Hanhart 415 ES Panda 39mm. So what's changed since my previous State of the Collection review? Well, I gifted one of my 2 Pequignet Concorde 40s to my father, so we now have the same pieces, and I added this 415 ES heavy hitter. So why did I add the heavy hitter to my collection? Well, I'll give you a wrist shot and I will explain. In the last 5 years, I have reviewed over 500 pieces, including a plethora of chronograph pieces. Everything from a Pequignet designed PD1644 to an Omega Speedmaster to a Rolex Daytona inclusive. So I've had the benefit of experiencing an incredible number of pieces, over 500 pieces in the last 5 years, and a plethora of chronographs. That has meant I've been able to refine what I like and dislike about pieces. Now, all of these 4 pieces added to my personal collection meet the 2 criteria, comfort level and feel good factor. So these are 2 most important things, comfort level and feel good factor. If a watch doesn't satisfy comfort level fully, and if a watch doesn't satisfy feel good factor fully, I cannot add it to my personal collection. Now, over the last 5 years, there are 2 other elements or 2 other criteria which have developed, and at the start of my channel in 2020, these 2 elements weren't important, but they now have become very important. Slim rehaut is one, and the other one is brand heritage. Now, you'll know from my previous State of the Collection reviews, over the last 5 years, in my State of the Collection reviews, I have owned a plethora of homage watches. Everything from Pequignet design to San Martin to Trasca inclusive. And I have no problem with homages to Rolex, Tudor and Omega pieces, for example. I've owned a plethora of them. And I previously owned a Panda version of the Daytona. It was the Pequignet designed PD1644. And I really like that piece because of the white dial and the black subdials, the Panda dial layouts. However, there were certain aspects of that piece I disliked, which I'll explain. The polished centre links were one thing I disliked. I disliked them on my PD1644 Panda and also disliked them on my Rolex Datejust 41. Now, the other thing I disliked about the PD1644 is the 3 subdials at 9, 6 and 3. I've come to a realisation that I prefer white Panda dial pieces with a bicompact style, subdials at 9 and 3, with the absence of a subdial at 6. I prefer the perfect symmetry of the dial. The thing I disliked about the PD1644 was it had a date complication at 4 o'clock and a subdial at 6. The other thing I disliked was the glossy ceramic bezel insert for the tachymeter as per the Daytona, which it is an homage to. I prefer matte bezels, regardless of whether they're made from aluminium or alternatively ceramic. For example, this one is ceramic, which of course one gets the benefit of it being harder and more scratch resistant than aluminium, but it has a matte finish. That's the point. It's not a glossy, shiny ceramic bezel insert as used on the Rolex Daytona, as used on the PD1644, which is an homage to it. So this does give the aesthetic of aluminium, but of course harder and more scratch resistant. So really, this is the perfect chronograph piece. And I say that as someone that's reviewed the Omega Speedmaster and also the Rolex Daytona. Yes, they are very iconic pieces. They're excellent quality pieces. But, however, I dislike them. Now, the Speedmaster, visually, I like the look of it. But the problem is, it's the case proportions. The truth is, I do not find an Omega Speedmaster fits my 8-inch wrist well. It feels too thick, and also the case diameter feels too large. And I always felt that the Speedmaster wasn't a very well balanced piece. The head of the piece was very large for the bracelet, and it was just a piece that I thought I could never bond with, because I did consider adding a Speedmaster to my collection. It is an iconic Omega piece. Visually it does look very aesthetically pleasing, but having reviewed 2 different versions of the Speedmaster Moonwatch, it would not satisfy comfort level and feel good factor, the 2 criteria. I also reviewed a Rolex Daytona. Now, the Daytona case does fit very well. I do like it, but the thing I dislike about the Panda version is the glossy, shiny finish to the ceramic bezel insert for the tachymeter. And this is something I want to explain. I don't have a problem with homages to Rolex, Tudor and Omega because I think they actually are a good way of testing out a piece before you buy the original, which it is an homage to. For example, there's nothing wrong with buying a Pequignet designed PD1644, which is an homage to the Daytona, to test it out before spending a lot of money buying a Panda Daytona, which is €20,000, for example. So one gets the benefit, and having tried the homage of it, which is close to it visually, I realised certain things I would dislike about the Rolex Daytona, such as the polished centre links, the glossy, shiny, black tachymeter scale on the bezel, made from ceramic, the 3 subdials, 9, 6 and 3 in black, and I thought to myself, I like the case and I like the taper of the bracelet because of course it has an oyster bracelet with a perfection personified 20-16 taper. 39mm is a good size for a chronograph. So I ruled out the Daytona because of the aforementioned aspects I dislike about it, and I ruled out the Speedmaster simply because of comfort level and feel good factor, could not be satisfied. The PD1644 is a comfortable piece, and I did like it because of the lack of heft, and of course it had an oyster style bracelet with a perfection personified 20-16 taper, albeit it had polished centre links, which I dislike. I previously reviewed both the Panda and the reverse Panda versions of this 415 ES heavy hitter, and I immediately liked the piece. I liked many things about it. The case shape, the fit, the taper of the lugs, has the perfection personified oyster style bracelet 20-16, micro adjustment clasp, which is a notable enhancement because we have on the fly adjustment. Everything I want from a watch was delivered because we have the taper, micro adjustment, and the other thing I like is the matte ceramic bezel insert versus being glossy, shiny black as per a Daytona. And so when I reviewed the Panda and the reverse Panda, I liked both of those pieces equally. Now, that presented me with a problem because I wanted to add a chronograph piece to my collection to give it better balance, because I have 2 dive pieces, my Submariner dates, and I had 1 daily wear or potentially dress piece in the Concorde 40. But I wanted to add a chronograph for balance. Now, problem was I couldn't find anything that satisfied me because the Daytona doesn't satisfy visually. The Speedmaster does satisfy visually, but not comfort level and feel good factor, and I've experienced them both. When I tried this Panda and the reverse Panda version of the 415 ES heavy hitter, they both satisfied immediately. I put them on wrist and I liked everything about it. The 20-16 perfection personified taper, micro adjustment clasp, the fact they're not too thick, they're not top heavy like a Speedmaster Moonwatch, matte bezel, bicompact style layouts, perfect symmetry. It's not an asymmetrical dial. There's no date complication at 4. There's no subdial at 6. And I've come to the realisation there's another thing I like about chronographs like this. If you look at the Arabic numerals, none of them are chopped off. For example, with some chronographs, the position of the subdials at 9, 6 and 3 and the diameter of the subdials means they partially obscure some of the Arabic numerals and they cut off portions of the Arabic numerals. What I like about this piece, and it is unusual for a bicompact chronograph, all of the Arabic numerals, you can see the full Arabic numeral. If you look at the 8 Arabic numeral and the 4 beneath the subdials, portions of them aren't chopped off. The subdials do not obscure the 8 and 4. Also, if you look at the 10 and 2 above the subdials, again, they're not obscured by the subdials. It's a fundamental that Hanhart have got correct. But so many other brands get this incorrect. They make the subdials too large in diameter, and they also make the Arabic numerals too large, the font. And the problem is then they have to cut off portions of the Arabic numerals, and they're obscured by the subdials. And regardless of whether it's a bicompact with a 9 and 3 dial, or whether it's a 9, 6 and 3, that's the problem. And visually, that just does not satisfy. I like to see the full Arabic numerals on the dial. Legibility of this dial is stellar. The quality of the printing is stellar. And I love it's got the original winged Hanhart logo, which again is on the micro adjustment clasp. This is the original winged Hanhart logo, which was used 50 years ago. The other thing that's important is brand heritage, because I detailed this in my previous State of the Collection review. The problem I have with micro brands and the problem I have with Chinese brands, regardless of price point, whether it's low tier or mid tier, is the lack of brand heritage. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to brands with heritage such as Seagull and Peacock, which I've previously reviewed. They do have brand heritage since 1955, which is excellent. But other low-tier Chinese brands, such as San Martin, they were founded in 2012, for example, and I dislike that lack of brand heritage. I like brands to have serious brand heritage. Now, all of these 4 brands, Pequignet, Rolex and Hanhart have heavy brand heritage. That pedigree, that brand heritage backing up the piece, that adds value to the piece, but it also means something to me because I like to own a watch where there's serious heritage behind the watch and the brand itself. And that's something I really like about Pequignet, it's something I really like about Rolex, it's something I really like about Hanhart, the brand heritage, because one can look up their original pieces from the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and when you have heritage reissues, such as the 415 ES, which effectively is a heritage reissue of an earlier 415, that is something I like about it. You can see the design elements that come from the original version. And with this one, Hanhart perfected it. What we're looking at is peak Hanhart here because they've got the balance perfected between vintage aesthetic and modern day specification. And when a brand does a heritage reissue, and Hanhart have done other versions of the 415 ES as direct heritage reissues, they are true to the original. The dial and the hands are perfectly replicated down to the original. But they've also released these versions, the Panda and Reverse Panda, which are contemporary because, yes, they are inspired by the original with the rotating dive style bezel with the 60-minute ticks, but they've updated it from aluminium to ceramic. But visually it does look similar, that's the point. But the balance is there because we've got a modern movement. The Solita Caliber SW510M, the manual wind version of the 510 automatic, so that's slimmed down the thickness of the piece to enhance comfort level and feel good factor. So it's modern day specification. Sapphire crystal versus acrylic, for example, we have AR coating. And of course we have a bracelet. The original didn't come on a bracelet like this, oyster style bracelet, 20 to 16. Micro adjustment clasp is modern day specification, but the balance is there. They've got the balance between vintage aesthetic and contemporary modern day specification. I've reviewed a plethora of Hanhart watches, and I can tell you, above all else, this is the greatest of them all. This is the one watch, because I'm in the fortunate position where I can afford to purchase any Hanhart piece in their current collection that I like. Out of all their pieces, this is the one that I want. This is the one that I like above all else. I think it's the greatest looking, and it was a difficult decision to choose between this Panda and the Reverse Panda. So why did I choose the Panda versus the Reverse Panda? Well, it's very simple, because if you look at my collection, I have 3 dark dial watches, navy blue and 2 black. And of course, if I added the Reverse Panda, I would then have 3 black dial pieces. I'd have 4 dark dial watches. And what I was looking for was better balance. I wanted a light dial piece. I wanted a white dial piece. And of course, this now has balance in the collection. And I'm very satisfied with it because, yes, the Pequignet Concorde 40 is fantastic as a daily wear piece or a dress piece. And navy blue, the vertical satin finishing is absolutely mesmerising. I love it. The 2 glossy black enamel dials of the Submariner Date Starbucks and the Submariner Date 16610, yes, I absolutely love those aspects, but for a chronograph, I did not want a black dial chronograph as per the Daytona or as per the Speedmaster Moonwatch. I do like the look of the Panda Daytona, but as I've detailed, there are certain things that I just dislike. The mirror polished centre links and the ceramic bezel insert for the tachymeter, they are just too shiny. It's just a very shiny piece. And I associate polished centre links with dress pieces. And that was something I disliked about my Datejust 41. It had a smooth bezel, and of course it had the oyster bracelet, and it does match. Smooth bezel goes with an oyster bracelet. When a Datejust 41 has a fluted bezel, of course it should have a Jubilee bracelet to match. I did like the smooth bezel with the Jubilee bracelet, but I just would have preferred it if it had brushed satin finished centre links as per my Submariner Dates. Because I think for an oyster bracelet, it gives it a more versatile daily wear look. When it has a polished centre link as per the Datejust or alternatively Milgauss, that gives the piece more of a dress watch aesthetic, and I just think it doesn't suit the Daytona. I actually think the Daytona would look better if it had a brushed satin finished oyster bracelet as per the Submariner Dates. And I think that Rolex made a mistake with mirror polishing it because now it's far too shiny. And that applies to both the steel bezel versions, gold bezel versions, and also the ceramic bezel versions, which are made from Cerachrome inlaid with platinum. And I've reviewed a 2-tone Daytona, which was oyster steel and also 18-karat gold, and of course the bezel was solid 18-karat gold. It was a very aesthetically pleasing piece, a €20,000 heavy hitter. Problem was, it was just very shiny. And yes, it would be suitable as a dress piece, but not as a daily wear piece. So, coming back to the rehaut, If you look at this, which is SW510M, manual wind version powered, just look how slender the rehaut is for a chronograph. This is just fantastic. The reason why I really like slim rehauts is because it makes the sapphire crystal, now regardless of whether the sapphire crystal is flat, double domed or boxed top hat style. What I like about it is when you have a slim rehaut, it means the underside of the sapphire crystal sits very close to the second hand, or in this case the chronograph hand, on top of the cannon pinion. So the sapphire crystal underside sits close to the handset, and it also sits close to the dial. This improves legibility, it improves the functionality, because the sapphire crystal looks very close to the dial on the hands. So the lack of depth, because the dial is close to the sapphire crystal, when you look at the piece straight on, it makes the sapphire crystal look invisible, as it should do. And this applies to flat sapphire crystals, double dome sapphire crystals, and also boxed top hat sapphire crystals. When they have AR coating, when the rehaut is slender, the crystal looks invisible when you look at it straight on. And it's something that these three brands do very well: Pequignet, Rolex and Hanhart respectively. And I've reviewed 500 watches from low tier to mid tier to high tier, and it's surprising, regardless of price point, low tier, mid tier, high tier, how many brands can't get this fundamental correct. They often have very deep rehauts, and sometimes it's unnecessary. Now, it's a given with a low tier Chinese AliExpress dive piece below €500 price point. Yes, they often have deep rehauts because they're powered by the NH35A and the NH38A, and it's a given that they are thick calibers and they need a deeper rehaut because of the hand stack height on the cannon pinion is taller. I've often referred to this in my reviews. However, I've often seen deep rehauts on pieces that are powered with lower profile calibers, such as the SW200-1 or the Miyota 9015 or the 9039. And the 9039, there's no excuse for it because that's one of my personal favourites because it has a very low hand stack height on the cannon pinion. It's a lower profile version of the 9015, and I really like it for that reason. But it's something I've seen microbands do in the mid-tier. They will have deep rehauts with a Miyota 9015 or 9039 powered piece, and there's no need for it. And it's not the case that it's a 200 or 300 metre water resistant piece and it has a thick sapphire crystal and thick case back, and therefore it's 13 plus as a result. It's purely down to the rehaut is far too thick. Now, just to compare, if you look at my Concord 40, just look how thin the rehaut is. And when you look at this piece straight on, the AR coating is fantastic, but the clarity of the sapphire crystal on this piece is just incredible. When you look at this piece straight on, it looks like the sapphire crystal is invisible. And when you look at it at an oblique angle, it actually looks like the sapphire crystal is so close to the second hand on top of the cannon pinion, it looks like it's touching it, like there is zero clearance whatsoever. This is something I really like about Pequignet. The tolerances of Pequignet pieces, the refinement is there, because the sapphire crystal runs so close to the second hand on top of the cannon pinion, it almost looks like it's going to foul it, but it never does. Like the second hand looks like it's going to touch the sapphire crystal and seize up. That's how close. The only other brand that can get it so close is Rolex. Pequignet can get it very close to it. Rolex really have the ultimate low profile rehauts, even on 300 metre water resistant pieces like my Starbucks 16610, and it is a given they have a thicker sapphire crystal because of the 300 metres. But even so, the sapphire crystal in my Submariner dates is very close to the second hand on the top of the cannon pinion. Pequignet can also get close to it. Very low profile. Just look how slender it is. This is a thinner rehaut than if this were powered by the SW200-1 or the 9015 or even the 9039, which has a low hand stack height on the cannon pinion. Of course, this is the benefit of it being powered by the caliber initial. I'll take it off and show it to you. Not only is this a technically excellent caliber, it's one of the main reasons why I added this to my collection, because I fully respect that Pequignet are making this in-house in Mortain, France. Just look at the decoration. I've referred to this in my review. The arabesque finishing on the main plate and the rhodium plating to the skeletonized rotor is just mesmerizing. Also, the pelage finishing is some of the best high-definition pelage finishing I have ever seen on a movement. I've reviewed Jaeger-LeCoultre Master ultra-thin pieces. I've reviewed high-tier pieces by Rolex, and I can tell you that they are the only brands that come close, and I would argue this is better finished than Rolex calibers. Rolex do use pelage finishing, but they do not use arabesque finishing like this on the main plate. The only other brand I've seen arabesque finishing like this is Omega. They do it, for example, when I reviewed the Omega Seamaster Diver 300M Professional, that also has arabesque finishing on the caliber 8900, and it's also used on the Omega Planet Ocean, which I've also reviewed. That has arabesque finishing on their coaxial master chronometer movements, but the point I'm making is Omega are the only brand that I've seen do it to this level. The arabesque finishing is just fantastic, the way it catches the light. So it's a mesmerising piece to look at when you take it off wrist and look at the movement. 65 hours, of course, is stellar. But this is the thing I like about this piece. Often with high power reserve calibers, 65-hour power reserves, they have a large barrel because, of course, it needs a large barrel to provide an additional 25 hours. An SW200-1 has 41 hours. That's a given. And that's nothing special. It's industry standard for automatics, but Pequignet has 65 hours from the caliber initial, so an additional 24 hours. And the thing is, one would expect it to have a very deep rehaut because one would expect a thicker caliber. But this doesn't have a thicker caliber. It's very low profile, as you can see. And the rehaut, just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. The rehaut on this piece is just so low profile when you tilt it at an oblique angle. So it's just fantastic. I absolutely love that. And of course, the vertical satin finishing to the dial is the main reason I chose this blue version. I previously reviewed the Vulcain Nautique Skin Diver, and that was the moment I came to the realisation I really like vertical blue satin finished dials as opposed to sunray blue or glossy enamel blue or texture blue. And that was the first piece I reviewed with a vertical satin finished blue dial, the Vulcain Nautique Skin Diver. And I did actually consider adding that piece to my collection because I like the dial so much. But then I realised that the Concorde 40 also has the same vertical satin finish rather than sunray blue dial. And it's just mesmerising the way it changes from a navy blue to a lighter blue. Just fantastic. The thing that may come as a surprise to you is, of all my 4 pieces, this Concorde 40 is the one I wear the most, and you'll often see me wear it in my reviews. Because for a daily wear piece, the comfort level and feel good factor of it are just stellar because it's so thin. It's so low profile. For a 65-hour piece, it's so flat and low profile. And the other thing is this obelisk link bracelet is just so thin. And often, I've referred to this when I've reviewed other integrated bracelet pieces. Often the mistake mid-tier and microbrands and brands make with integrated bracelet pieces, regardless of case size, regardless of taper as well, the thickness of the links is just too thick. That's the problem. They get the taper correct. They do a nice aggressive taper to delete some of the meats, which is good. And even when they have a 39mm head of the piece, which isn't too large or too thick, they make a mistake fundamentally with the bracelet because the actual links, they are far too thick. But this one has very thin links. And I've come to appreciate this obelisk link bracelet because not only does it articulate fluidly, but also the thinness of the links means it feels invisible on wrist. It's just so comfortable. Comfort level on this is stellar. It's one of the most comfortable, if not the most comfortable piece I have ever experienced in over 500 watches. When I wear this on when I wear this on wrist, it's honestly. Unlike many other watch channels, you'll know this from my previous reviews, I do not edit out mistakes to appear flawless. Therefore, there's a plethora of verbal and visual mistakes in my 656 reviews. But I leave them in. So, when you wear this on wrist, it just feels invisible. It feels perfectly balanced. The balance on this piece is some of the best I've experienced because the head of the piece does not feel top heavy like a thick block or slab of 316L grade stainless steel. It's flat, low profile, taper is correct, very thin, low-profile obelisk link bracelet. But the point I'm making is, it feels weightless. It just feels like an invisible piece. And honestly, in over 500 pieces, from low tier to mid tier to high tier, this is one of the most, if not the most comfortable piece. Balance is correct. And that's the reason why I find myself wearing it more than the other pieces, because I actually just enjoy the comfort level and the feel-good factor because they are maximised to the ultimate limit. I really do not think there is a more comfortable piece, and I do not think there is a piece with better feel-good factor, because when you wear a piece that feels invisible on wrist, when it feels completely balanced to perfection, the head of the piece and the bracelet balanced perfectly, the pleasure you get from feeling the piece, regardless of of price point. It's just maximised, and I can honestly say it's one of the most satisfying pieces. Now, king piece of my collection, of course, remains Starbucks. Now, this is the Mark 1, and I've detailed this in my previous State of the Collection reviews, but I'll reiterate it. Why did I choose the Mark 1 versus the Mark 2? I prefer the green tone of the Cerachrome on the Mark 1 versus the darker green tone of the Mark 2. Rolex changed it between Mark 1 and Mark 2. Now, subjectively, from an investment perspective, this is more collectible because this had a limited production run between 2020 and 2023 with the Mark 1, and then from 2024 onwards they changed to the Mark 2. So this had a short production run of 3 years. To put that into perspective, typically Rolex pieces have a circa 10-year production run. So for example, they'll produce the Hulk for 10 years and then discontinue it, produce the Starbucks for 10 years probably and then discontinue it. But it's unusual for them to produce a piece, for example a Mark 1 Starbucks with a Cerachrome bezel for only 3 years, and they change the tone of the bezel after only 3 years in the 10-year cycle of production. So that's something I like about this piece. They did do it with the Kermits, for example, through the life cycle of the Kermit from 2003 to when it was discontinued. They went through several different colour aluminium bezel inserts. So, for example, the very early version, the true 50th anniversary Kermit, produced in 2003 to celebrate 50 years of the Submariner dates, from 1953 to 2003. The true Kermit 50th anniversary version, the flat 4 LV Lunette Verte, that had a light lime green aluminium bezel insert, and visually I actually dislike it because I think the lime green looks too light. I prefer the 2007, 2008 darker green aluminium bezel inserts used on the Kermit. When I purchased my new old stock 16610, I actually did consider adding a Kermit 16610 LV to my collection because I do like the dark green of the 2008 version of it versus the 2003 version used on the flat 4. My point I'm making is, through the life cycle of the Kermit, they changed the bezel insert several times. I think there's 5 different versions which have been well documented by purists. From the lime green 2003 on the LV, the true anniversary 50th version, the flat 4, through to the 2008 darker green. There are 5 different shades. With this Starbucks, there are only 2. There's the Mark 1 and Mark 2, and I prefer the Mark 1 because the green is lighter green. This is more like the green of Rolex watch boxes, the true Rolex green. The Mark 2 had a darker green, and I actually dislike it. I think it's more dull. The Mark 2 has a darker green Cerachrome, which reminded me of my Rolex Hulk. Before I started my channel, in 2018, I owned a Rolex Hulk, and I actually really like that piece because of the green sunray dial and the green Cerachrome bezel. But the green was a different colour green to this Starbucks. It was a darker green to match the sunray green dial, and it did work very well, but I dislike the maxi case with a thick lug. So I think Rolex made a mistake, and they acknowledged that, because when they produced this case, the successor, the 126610 case, they slimmed down the lugs, but of course they increased the bracelet width, the lug width. But the point is, the lugs are more slender, more like a 16610, which is better. The maxi case used on the 116610 LN, which I previously owned, it was far too thick, and also on the LV version, the Hulk. So point I'm making is I dislike the Hulk tone of the Cerachrome and also dislike the Mark II. Now, I could have purchased a 2024 or even 2025 Starbucks, but I actually chose an earlier version, the Mark I, because I just prefer the green. And also it's more collectible because I've detailed the Mark I will always be sought after by purist Rolex collectors due to the short production run of 3 years. So that's the reason why I chose a Mark I. Now, the thing is, yes, comfort level and feel good factor are satisfied, but the truth is, the 16610 is more comfortable. I think what we're looking at here with the 16610, this is peak Rolex. I consider this to be the very best Rolex Submariner dates they have ever made. I prefer this to my Starbucks. Now, technically, the Starbucks is a better piece because it has the chronology movement. The caliber 3235 is chronology. Ceramic ball bearings, it's more efficient, higher power reserve, it's a better movement. However, the 3135 used in this piece is quieter because it doesn't have ceramic ball bearings, it has steel ball bearings. The other thing I like about it is as I've detailed, when you rotate the crown clockwise, it makes the hands rotate clockwise when you're setting the time. With the Starbucks, with the chronology movement, the caliber 32-35, I dislike it because when you rotate the crown clockwise, the chronology gearing reverses, so it makes the hands go anti-clockwise. It goes the opposite way to the crown. It's not intuitive, and I dislike that because it should be intuitive. I don't regard it as an upgrade when you have the crown rotating clockwise and the hands going backwards. I think that's a downgrade. But on a positive note, this 16610, the case shape, the taper of it is just fantastic. I absolutely love it. And of course, needless to say, it has the perfection personified 20-16 taper, which my Starbucks does not have. I think what Rolex should have done at the end of this production life of the 16610, rather than discontinuing it, they should have just upgraded it with a 126610 LN, but simply do two changes. Change the aluminium bezel insert to ceramic and change the clasp to the glide lock clasp. That would have been enough update. And of course, they could have done a third update and upgraded the movement from the 3135 to the chronology 3235 to give it more power reserve, make it more efficient. But even if they didn't upgrade the movement, simply upgrading the ceramic bezel inserts to make it more scratch resistant than aluminium, that would have been one. And upgrading to the glide lock clasp. I actually prefer visually the silver tone of the minute ticks, the hour markers and the Arabic numerals. I like the aesthetic of aluminium that's been anodized black. Yes, it's not a scratch resistant, but the other thing is, with vintage pieces, they are subject to patination. So they develop a patina on the bezel. Now, regardless of whether it's a Pepsi bezel in blue and red on a GMT Master 2 or a black bezel insert on a Submariner Dates, or even a Kermit, for example, with a green bezel, the point I'm making is ultraviolet light fades the anodizing, and also daily wear and tear, rubbing against the anodizing wears it off, and it goes lighter. But the point I'm making is, with the Pepsi bezel inserts, black bezel inserts, and green bezel insert, regardless, they all fade. And I like vintage pieces from the 1960s, 1970s and 1980s, and the same applies to Tudor pieces such as the Tudor Submariner with a blue bezel insert and snowflake hands. I really like the way they fade, they patinate. And of course, it's very aesthetically pleasing when you have a 1960s or 1970s piece and it has tritium on the hands and the dial because it develops a lovely peach tone. And of course, the bezel also fades to what's called a ghost bezel. I love those vintage pieces with a ghost bezel, which is like a grey bezel, and the peach tone of indices and also handset. That looks fantastic, regardless of whether it's Mercedes hands or snowflake hands on a Tudor Submariner or Rolex Submariner Date. They just look fantastic. Now, that's the problem I have with Cerachrome, which is inlaid with platinum, because it will never develop patination. So, for example, in 50 years' time, the green Cerachrome bezel on my Starbucks will look exactly the same as it does now. The platinum will never fade, as per White's paint or tritium. And of course, the other problem is the Cerachrome itself, which is sintered at 3000 degrees Celsius and then inlaid with platinum particles. That will never patinate. There's another thing I dislike, and I've referred to this before, but I'll reiterate it. I actually dislike this about Rolex bezels, regardless of colour. The Cerachrome is sintered at 3000 degrees Celsius, and then they inlay into the engravings platinum particles, and then the Cerachrome cools down to room temperature, and the platinum particles are then set permanently inside the engravings. So it's very durable, but they have this dull finish to the platinum. It's like a dull grey. It's not shining reflective silver as per an aluminium bezel insert on my 16610. It's got this dull grey, it's matte grey, like anthracite. And the truth is, and I actually referred to this when I did my most viewed video, which is my Pequignet design PD1661 versus Rolex Submariner Dates 116610 LN, because the aforementioned is an homage to the latter. But when I compared them side by side, I actually referred to that. It was ironic. The Pequignet design PD1661 ceramic bezel insert with white paint actually looked better than the Cerachrome used on my Rolex Submariner Dates with platinum, because platinum is dull grey. And the truth is, the legibility of the platinum is not as good as white paint. Now, of course, the best option is as per Tudor Pelagos or other fully loomed ceramic bezel inserts. For example, the Steel Dive SD1953, which you're all familiar with. That's an €80 low tier piece. But one thing I want to give due credit to Steel Dive for, they do a very good job of the ceramic bezel inserts on the SD1953, which is a Submariner date homage, because they don't just paint the engravings with white paint, as per the PD1661. They infill it with BGW9, and in daylight it looks white, but in the dark it's got stellar performance. It's a full 5 to 6 layers of BGW9, and Steel Dive really deserve credit because it's an €80 piece, but it's better than other fully loomed ceramic bezel inserts or more expensive pieces, and that's something I really like about the SD1953. And I honestly think that Rolex have made a mistake with using platinum on the Cerachrome bezel. What they should have done was, when they changed from using an aluminium bezel insert to Cerachrome, which is ceramic, they should have inlaid it with BGW9, or they call it chromolite. They use chromolite on the indices and the white gold hands, but really chromolite is the same as BGW9. It has the same blue tone superluminova. The Tudor Pelagos has it. It has a ceramic bezel insert, but of course it's fully loomed with BGW9, and I've reviewed the Pelagos and it's something I really like about it. Of course the Snowflake hands perform better than the Mercedes hands, but nonetheless, the truth is the Pelagos bezel, I regard it as better than the Cerachrome bezel used on the Submariner dates, regardless of whether it's a Starbucks or whether it's just the black version. I think they've done a better job of it. Now, if you look at the aluminium bezel insert on my 16610, I think it's more aesthetically pleasing because it does have a shiny black anodizing to it, but it's not as shiny as ceramic. And I've previously owned a plethora of Submariner dates with Cerachrome bezels. I owned the two-tone, black and gold, and also I owned the Hulk, and also I've owned a plethora. The 116610LN, which is the maxi case version. I also own the no date version of it, the successor, the 126610LN, and I can honestly say that I prefer the aluminium bezel inserts versus Cerachrome, regardless of colour. I like the silver minute ticks and the silver hour markers and also the silver Arabic numerals. It gives it a nice vintage aesthetic, and the truth is, I think the legibility is better, because when you have this shiny silver, the minute ticks and the Arabic numerals are actually more legible than the dull grey platinum on the Cerachrome. So yes, Rolex could have updated it and simply kept the proportions of the 16610 and upgraded it to ceramic, but I think this is actually better looking. Just the aesthetic of it, that's the point. Glide lock clasp, of course, is better. That's something I wish they had in 2010 when they discontinued this. They should have upgraded to the glide lock and kept the 20 to 16 perfection personified taper. I'll just show you that side by side actually, because it's something I think is better done on the 16610. Lug width. 20 to 16 is just perfection for a 40 or a 41. Now if you look at them side by side, you can see there's more meat on the, just bear with me, I'll get a good grip of them. So there's more meat on the Starbucks bracelet because of course we have the wider lug width 21 and of course the lugs are thicker. But if you look at the taper, Starbucks taper on the Oyster bracelet, it's wider, it's more flared, and there's an aggressive taper down to the glide lock, but the 20 to 16 perfection personified taper, because we have the 20mm lug width, when you get down to the clasp bend, you can see it's beneficial because this glide lock clasp is slightly too wide, and it's due to the bracelet being slightly too wide. If you look at the clasp on the 16610, you can see it's more slender, and the truth is, yes, it's beneficial to have a glide lock clasp, because on-the-fly adjustment is a given, it's better. But the truth is, in terms of comfort, this clasp, although it's pressed Oyster steel, 904L, it's actually more low profile, and it's actually lighter, it's thinner, and the truth is it's not as bulky. Comfort level is better with this clasp. It's not as good because there is no micro adjustment, but the truth is it's thinner. It's thinner in thickness, it's thinner in width, and of course it's lighter. And of the two, I actually prefer the comfort level. Now, I'm often critical of brands, this is the irony of it, I'm often critical of brands in 2025 using pressed metal clasp. I will always say, well, one can be magnanimous about it with a low-tier Chinese piece between €0 and €500. One has to expect some production cost-cutting measures. You've heard me say that. Pressed clasp, of course, one expects it on an Invicta Pro diver, and I have reviewed them side by side with my 16610. I own the homage to it. But in 2025, the industry standard is solid milled 316L grade stainless steel clasp, but in 2010 this is what Rolex were using. But the actual truth of it is it's very thin and it sits very close to the wrist, and I'll just show you the reason why it's actually very comfortable, because if you look at the curvature of it, it sits very flat to the wrist. It's like it's invisible and it's wafer thin. Now, one could argue, well, it's not very durable and robust, is it? Because it's so thin. Pressed stainless steel or oyster steel, which is 904L, it's not as durable as a solid milled 316L grade stainless steel. It is a given that a milled clasp is more tough. But the point I'm making is, look how thin it is, wafer thin. And it wraps around the wrist with perfect curvature, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8. It's so thin and so wafer thin. Even when it overlaps with the right hand portion lapping it, like so, it's still wafer thin. There is no gap whatsoever beneath it. The flanks, you can see when you close it, the curvature is perfect for a 6 to 7 and for a 7 to 8. This is something that other brands cannot get correct, and I'll do the same with my Starbucks with a glide lock, and you'll see the difference. I don't regard it as an enhancement. When the clasp is more wide, when it's more thick, when it's more bulky, it actually ironically diminishes comfort level rather than enhancing it. And this comes back to my two criteria for a piece to be added to my personal collection. It has to meet the criteria of comfort level and feel good factor. And yes, this is a comfortable piece, and yes, it does give feel good factor, but I'm going to show you the difference. And I think this is a problem when the taper isn't 20 to 16. This is more bulky. It's solid milled oyster steel, which is good, finished to perfection. But look how thick it is in comparison. Now, curvature is still good. It is thin, but it's thicker than the press one. And you can see the difference. It does curve around the wrist, but we've got more meat. And the problem is when you overlap it, yes, this centre section does fit inside the left-hand portion when it overlaps like so. But now you can see it's not as low profile when you close it. It's more bulky. Now, of course, it does have to house the glide lock mechanism internally. That's a given to give on-the-fly adjustment. So, of course, one has to expect it to be more bulky because we have got internals. But just look, we've now got a gap. That's something the other class doesn't have. We don't have this gap underneath the flip block and the body itself. You see, this is not as low profile, and of course, it's wider. So I would argue this is not as comfortable. The comfort level and feel good factor of the glide lock is not as good. Yes, subjectively it is better to have on-the-fly adjustment, and visually it does look good because beautiful luster. And of course we've got the embossed coronet, but you can see I think it's too wide. Had they made it 20 to 16 in a perfection personified taper, they could have slimmed down the glide lock as used on the predecessor, the 116610LN, which of course had the maxi case, but the benefit was it had the 20 to 16 taper. The glide lock on the 116610LN, which I previously owned and reviewed, that was more slender. So previous glide lock was better proportions, but nonetheless that's what they put on it. So of the four pieces, which is my favourite? Well, difficult decision, because we have different style pieces and different prices. So to remind you, Pequignet Concord 40 is my daily wear or dress piece. Submariner Date Starbucks and Submariner Date 16610, they're my dive pieces. And of course I've got the chronograph covered with the 415ES Panda heavy hitter. Of the four pieces, the king piece is my Starbucks, and the most worn piece, which may come as a surprise, is on a daily basis my Pequignet Concord 40, because it gives the best comfort level and feel good factor. I do also enjoy wearing my heavy hitter because the white bicompact style is very aesthetically pleasing. It's just a fantastic looking piece from every angle. In terms of price point, there's a massive difference. So to remind you, Concord 40 is €4,000, Starbucks is 14,000, 16610 was new old stock, unworn, brand new, fully stickered, box and papers, end of the production, highly collectible, December 2010, 13,500. This is 2,690 on the oyster style bracelet. So massive difference in price. 4,000, 14,000, 13,500, 2,690 respectively. Just goes to show, it's not the case that the most expensive heavy hitter in the collection, the king piece, gives the most satisfaction in terms of comfort level and feel good factor. Most satisfying piece in terms of comfort level and feel good factor is actually my Pequignet Concorde 40 at €4,000. It's not my Starbucks at 14,000. It's not my 16610 at 13,500, and it's not this heavy hitter at 2,690. However, comfort level and feel good factor of this piece are fantastic because we have the female pitted links. Case shape is stellar. It's just a fantastic looking piece from every angle, and I do really like wearing this. It just gives so much satisfaction. The profile of the double dome sapphire crystal is low profile. It's not too thick. Looks like acrylic, plexiglass or hesselite, but of course harder and more scratch resistant. Slender rehaut is something I absolutely love. It's just a fantastic looking piece. And I will say this, of all my State of the Collection reviews in the last 5 years, I've reached what I consider to be the most satisfying in terms of balance, because over the years I've tried to get balance and I've experimented with 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 pieces and even larger 6-piece collections. You'll have seen that in my previous State of the Collection reviews. But I was always looking for balance. And what I mean by balance is I wanted variety, not just in dial colour, but in style of watch, because I make no secret to the fact I'm a Rolex fanboy and I'm a Submariner Dates fanboy, but I wanted versatility in my collection. I wanted a daily wear piece that could be potentially worn as a dress piece, which I've got covered with the Concorde 40 on the obelisk link bracelet. 2 dive pieces with the Starbucks and the 16610. I like both of them equally. The 16610 will always be my favourite Rolex piece of them all, and if I had to choose one Rolex of all the Rolex pieces, it would be the 16610, not the Starbucks. And the chronograph is covered by the Panda heavy hitter. So what I've now got is perfect balance. Daily wear dress piece, 2 dive watches and a chronograph. Nice variety. And I like that I've got a navy blue dial, 2 black dials and 1 white dial with a Panda. So some variety. I have got some colour with the green bezel of the Starbucks as well, which does add some interest. And I think it's just the right amount of balance because we've got a blue dial, green bezel, black dial and Panda dial chronograph. So we've got some variety of colour. Different styles. Square case of the Concorde 40 is 1970s vintage aesthetic. Of course, Starbucks is contemporary. 16610 is an iconic classic case, the greatest Rolex case ever made. And I consider the 415 ES heavy hitter to be Hanhart's, it's peak Hanhart. It's the greatest Hanhart piece ever made. In their current collection, this heavy hitter is the best. It cannot be beaten. They made correct decision after correct decision. Visually it looks good, feels good. Comfort level is satisfied, feel good factor is satisfied, slim rehaut is satisfied, brand heritage is satisfied. Every single criteria is not just met, it is exceeded. So stellar piece. So I can honestly say, in 5 years, in over 500 watches and a plethora of chronograph pieces, a plethora of daily wear pieces, a plethora of dress pieces, a plethora of dive pieces, this is the most satisfied, the most balanced my collection has ever been. These 4 heavy hitters, they are all outstanding pieces and I absolutely love them. Comfort level is satisfied, feel good factor is satisfied, slim rehaut is satisfied, brand heritage is satisfied. I highly recommend these 4 heavy hitters to you. They are fantastic. So I hope you've enjoyed my November 2025 State of the Collection. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.